The Wheel and the Butterfly.
That's my
Written
line! That's
by
my
Justice
line!
3442.
No!
Read by, no!
The Wheel and the Butterfly. Written by Justice 3442 and read by
And
Chapter 20. Pinky vs. Melancholy. Pinky sighed and poked at her half-eaten plate of marinara sauce pasta.
still thinking about Dan?
Elise said, looking up from the steak she was cutting. The two shared a cozy booth in a dimly lit restaurant. From the booth, they could look out a large window into a vast expanse of a parking lot and a mall. The parking lot was quiet if one discounted all the police cars, ambulances, fire trucks, trucks that were literally on fire, and people rioting. No, well, yeah, sorta, Pinky admitted.
I'm amazed you put up with him at all. You have the patience of a saint to share living quarters with that man, especially in that tiny apartment.
Elise brought a forkful of barely cooked steak into her mouth, chewed and swallowed.
I mean, I would have killed him within a week.
Sorry, Elise, but I'm not sure you're a great metric here. Elise thought about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've killed for far less than anything Dan's done to me. Or Chris.
Elise leveled her fork in Pinky's direction.
Or you.
Elise, you've got a little something. Pinky rubbed a spot next to her own mouth. Elise grabbed her napkin and daintily dabbed a little red trickle from the corner of her mouth.
Better?
She asked with a smile. Pinky matched the smile. You got it. Pinky's expression went thoughtful again as she rested her elbow on the table and her head on her fist. It's just, when we go out, we have so much fun. Just the best. I mean, okay, things tend to get destroyed, whether we intend for that to happen or not, and sometimes people get hurt, whether we intend for that to happen or not, but I always have such a blast when I go out with him. Oh, I know he has fun, too. You should just hear the laughter that comes out of him when we're driving away from a restaurant, or if we started a fire. Or if we're driving away from a restaurant we accidentally set on fire. Pinky looked back at Elise. He does things with me none of my other friends would ever even dream of doing. Heck, they'd probably try to talk me out of it. Not Dan, though. Pinky glanced away again and began to speak in a maternal tone. It's never, no, Pinky, you can't fire me out of a cannon at hornets. Or, a burn ward probably isn't the most appropriate place for a luau, Pinky. And even a missile projectile that explodes with glitter sounds dangerous. Pinky looked back at Elise, and her face shifted to a big smile. With Dan, wouldn't using a catapult to lob the hornet's nest be more effective? And I'm concerned we didn't bring enough lighter fluid for the bonfire. Pinky's eyes went distant for a bit, and her smile shifted to one of warm contentment. I think we need to adjust the gunpowder to glitter ratio a bit. Elise blinked a few times, not sure how to respond to what were almost certainly admissions of crimes.
Well, personally, I think a burn ward is the best place for a luau. What about these other friends of yours?
Pinky sighed as her expression turned glum. They're in another dimension, she added sadly.
Oh, right.
Elise said, as she remembered that both Pinky and Dan seemed to be sold on the idea that Pinky had come from some sort of pony world. Pinky's face lit up again. But I can still talk to them, they've even met Dan.
Really?
Elise answered, not sure what to make of that. Yeah! Pinky's smile grew wider. He even hit it off really well with a couple of them, and I think a few more are coming around to liking him too, Pinky said excitedly.
Wait.
Elise said, deciding to disregard the other dimension part for a bit.
They've met him, and some of them like him?
Elise asked in a shocked tone. Pinky nodded her head vigorously. Uh-huh, we actually all thought my friend Fluttershy would be terrified of Dan. Oh, but he was so nice to her. She talked about Dan's emotional issues with opening up to people, and he helped her with a toxic relationship, as Dan put it. Pinky closed her eyes and smiled at the memory.
You're telling me Dan, the guy who shares an apartment with you, talked about his feelings with a friend of yours and helped her out with her relationship?
Elise said in disbelief. Oh, he was the most helpfulest giver I ever saw, Pinky insisted. Elise thought about this for a second.
Are you sure it wasn't just some guy claiming to be Dan who looked a lot like him?
Elise asked with a raised eyebrow, the question an oddly likely explanation. Well, Pinky thought for a second. He also kept calling one of my other friends a nerd and flipped off a bunny, so I'm pretty sure it was Dan.
Yeah, okay, that sounds like something Dan would do. So, today...
Elise continued. Pinky's excited expression surrendered to her mopey, sad one. Oh, I don't know, I guess. Pinky paused, trying to sort her thoughts out. I try to be super nice and friendly with Dan and even make yummy lactose-free foods for him, but he often makes me feel like I'm intruding in his space at home. Elise struggled with telling Pinky she should consider moving out.
She was just so happy looking, talking about Dan 30 seconds ago. Also, Dan seems to rope Chris into his schemes a lot less now that he can conscript Pinky to help him, and when he does get Chris involved. Wow, I haven't had to post bail for anyone in about a month.
Elise?
Oh, sorry, Pinky.
Elise smiled.
I was just thinking about how much better things are now that you're Dan's friend.
Pinky's eyes lit up. Really? She asked excitedly, even tearing up a little. Elise reached a hand over to her friend's shoulder.
Really?
She reassured with a warm smile. Good! Pinky's eyes went distant and her smile went warm once more. It seems like almost every day with him turns into an adventure. Maybe not always the adventure I wanted, but I'm used to that too. It's fun and exciting and maybe a little terrifying at times, but it's sort of like how things were back at home. Being here with Dan... Pinky trailed off for a second and looked back at Elise. It makes me less homesick somehow, she said as tears welled up behind her eyes. Elise dwelled on this for a bit.
I'm probably going to regret saying this, but I think Dan likes you too.
I hope so.
No, I think he really does. I just don't think he really knows how to express it with, well, anybody really.
Pinky pondered this. Do you think he'll start being nicer to me? Pinky asked, hopefully.
Oh, I'm sure he will if he keeps on fearing you're going to stab him repeatedly,
Elise said with a chuckle. Pinky's expression went neutral. Yeah, I just wish I could get through to him without threatening violence against him.
Take it from someone who's known Dan for far longer than she cares to remember. Violence is oftentimes the only language he understands.
Yeah, I guess. A couple of armored SWAT vehicles pulled up, and fully armored SWAT personnel complete with riot shields poured out. Soon outside was filled with calls from megaphones asking the crowd to disperse, angry cries from rioters, and tear gas. The two looked out with a detached level of curiosity, then went back to their meals.
So what kind of movie do you want to see?
Elise asked. Pinky looked up to the ceiling with a, tapping her chin thoughtfully. Slasher flick, she answered simply, looking back. Elise paused mid-bite.
Pinky, the last time we all went out to a movie like that, Dan's in my ears started ringing. You and Chris were screaming so loud.
Pinky quickly slurped a bunch of pasta, the red marinara sauce splattering up and all over her face. I know, but I'm in a real mood to see some bloodshed tonight for some reason, Pinky explained simply. Elise went silent and finally said,
Pinky, you've got a little something...
Elise moved her palm in a circular motion in front of her own face. Pinky grabbed her napkin and toweled away the red sauce she just sprayed over herself. Better? She asked with a smile. Elise matched her smile.
Match,
she answered. A brick suddenly smashed through the window. A crazed but otherwise normally dressed man draped his body through the now shattered window and screamed, "All is vanity!" before a team of SWAT members wrestled him to the ground, tear gas beginning to billow in through the shattered window. Pinky sighed and buried her face in both palms. Just once I'd like to buy several outfits of clothing and not have everyone make a big deal out of it. Elise reached into her purse and pulled out a couple of gas masks, handing one to Pinky.
Here, put this on.
Pinky looked surprised. You keep gas masks in your purse? She exclaimed.
You know, I end up using them with surprising frequency.
Elise said, shrugging with both shoulders and her eyes. Pinky smiled. Elise, I really miss my friends, but I want you to know that you're all the best people I could ever hope to meet. Pinky donned her gas mask and smiled warmly at her friend.
Thanks, Pinky. You too.
Elise said, smiling back as she put her own mask on. Dessert? Pinky asked, grabbing a thin menu and holding it up in front of her faceplate. A waiter with tears streaming down his face coughed and fled past the two women, tripping several times as he made his way to the exit. He was followed by the rest of the occupants of the restaurant. Pinky sat her menu down. Or maybe not.
There's a frozen yogurt place down the street. I don't think it's been vandalized or set on fire yet.
Pinky gasped.
Can I add my own toppings?
Elise stood and left a few bills on the table.
Absolutely,
she said with a smile and a nod.
Yay!
Pinky said, excitedly cupping her hands together and bringing them up to her mask. Elise made her way to the exit as Pinky giddily followed. Together, the two navigated the carnage and made their way back to the blue sedan.